Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining. It's 5 minutes past the hour, so I think we'll get started. Um, this is the seventh in our webinar series. Um, we try to do a few of these a year. So if you're coming back for another one, thank you for coming back. If you're new to our webinars, I'll just give you a little rundown on how we do it. I've got a few subjects here that I'm going to go through. Today's subjects are going to focus planning around planning, so planning work, planning parts, planning preventive maintenance, and the work order console. And we're going to talk about a lot of the about some new tools that are in the system, some new features that will help with planning, as well as go through a few processes that maybe you don't know about. Everything we're going to talk about today are all features that are available in the current version of the system. Okay, so if you're looking at it and you're saying, I'd like to have that, but I don't see it in my system, talk to your account manager or talk to our support team, and they'll be able to help you out with that. Help you out with either enabling it or adding it into your system. Okay, so we're not talking about any special features. We're not going to talk about anything that requires extra billing or anything like that. Just stuff that's already in the system. So as we go, if you have questions, if you have any questions come up, post them in the chat. I've got Matt White here monitoring the chat. If he's gonna collect all those questions up, and when we have a few planned stops through our agenda here, and where we're going to stop and answer those questions. So Matt will gather them all up and pass them on. Everybody's mic is muted right now just to avoid background noise. So yeah, just post them in the chat, and we'll answer them as we go. All right. So, and the last point I will make, we are recording this. So we record all of our webinars. We post them on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search Megamation, you'll find our channel there. All of our previous webinars are all there, as well as a bunch of some demonstration videos and some instructional videos, or a lot of instructional videos, are all on our YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out when you get a chance, and I will upload this webinar recording when we're done. All right, let's get into it. So, as I said, today we're going to talk about some planning features. I'm going to start with preventive maintenance forecasting. So we have a PM forecasting report. It's been in the system for quite a while. It used to be known as the phantom hours report. If you've been around Directline for a while, you may see it as phantom hours report. But we're going to talk about some features that are in PM forecasting now. We're going to talk about some planning features for planning with inventory. So part of that is going to come up with PM forecasting, because we can forecast PM hours as well as materials, or required materials for PMs. We'll also talk about some planning features for tracking when inventory is available or not available, and how to be able to keep an eye on that. And then the last one, and kind of the biggest thing that I want to talk about today, is the work order console, and some planning features in there. Some new, some that have been around a long time that a lot of people don't know about. So we're gonna get into that, we're gonna get into that as kind of the last piece. This whole webinar should run somewhere around an hour. This is the second run of it, and it took about an hour last time, so I'm thinking right around the same today. All right, so let's talk about PM forecasting. Now, PM forecasting has been around a long time. Okay, like I said, we used to have a report called the Phantom Hours report. If you're currently using an older version of the system, you may still have the phantom hours report, but there's no reason we can't move the PM forecasting report into your system. So if you're looking at your system now and you're seeing phantom hours, this is a similar report, and we can update that for you. So what the PM forecasting report is to forecast the required labor and the required materials for PMs that have not been scheduled yet at any point in the future. Okay, it's going to show us the dates the work order is scheduled for. It's going to show us parts and labor, and the newest feature in our PM forecasting report is the ability to view the PMs on a calendar. Okay, so it gives you a calendar view, so it lets you look at it from the perspective of looking at load balancing your PM labor. So to run the report, we are going to go to the PM forecast report. We find that in the preventive maintenance module, we put in a start date. Oh, let me get my pointer here. There we go. We put in a start date, we put in an end date, and we can do a projection period division. So and basically what that means is it going to show us a month at a time, or is it going to break it down by week? I always like to do it by week, and we see it over here. I like to do it by week because it gives me a better view of what's going on. When you have the calendar available in your system, you can check this only show calendar box. I will caution you that if you're only showing the calendar, you're not going to see materials on the calendar. Okay, so you don't get the material tab when you're just looking at the calendar. So just something to keep in mind. If you're planning to forecast materials as well as hours, you might want to run the report, and then once you've run it here and you can see hours and materials, you can still flip over to the calendar by hitting the view and calendar button. So what this is showing us is I broke it up by assigned to code. You could also do it by trade, by employee, equipment, or building. I did it by assigned to because our system that we're working in breaks down. It does assign to by trade, so it's giving me a nice layout of each trade's PM load for this month. Okay, and this is for June of 2025, so that's 4 months from now, and we're just looking out that far because maybe we've got a lot of vacation time coming up. Maybe we've got some people wanting to take vacation for graduations, or if you're in a school, you might have graduations coming up, and you want to make sure that you don't have a bunch of PM landing when you have to do when you've got all of that busy graduation stuff happening. So we can see that breakdown here. We can see how many hours each trade is going to have each week for preventive maintenance. And we can right away, I see the maintenance department right here is pretty out of balance by having 21 hours as opposed to between 2 and 4 for all the other weeks in the month. So this gives us the opportunity to look at that and say, well, can we do anything with that? If we want to see exactly where each of these things are coming from, we can double click on the assign to code, and this is what it's going to show us. So this is for the first week for maintenance, and it's the first week of June, and we can see we have 2 PMs, and each one gives and we have 2 PMs with 2.5 hours on one and 2 hours on the other. Okay, so it gives us a breakdown. We can see exactly which PM it is, and then we can double click on that PM and we'll be able to view it. We'll be able to view the actual PM entry. So let me jump over into the system here and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So let me minimize that console, and we're going to go under preventive maintenance. We're going to go to the PM forecast report. Okay, and just to show you where in the menu we see that, just because I don't want to go too fast on that. Under preventive maintenance, we have the PM forecast report. So when we jump into that and we look at we look at June to keep it consistent with our slides. And we're going to go by assign to. Here is our report, and you can see it runs the report fairly quickly, right? This is a fairly big database. There's a lot of data in here, yet it loads that fairly quickly. It does it so you can run this a few times. You can run it anytime you need to look at what's going on. So what I did on my previous slide, what we're looking at is this, right? Our 2 PMs, and here's our hours. Now I can look at this, as I mentioned, we have 1 week here that seems very out of balance. We have 21 hours. We double click on that, and then we can see that we have some quarterly PMs that are coming up in there, and an annual PM. So we have we have a monthly here that's going to happen every month, but then we have a couple others that have wider frequencies, but happen to be landing at the same time, and that's why that's why we have so many hours on the 21st. So let's take a look at this in our new calendar view. So we've got our forecast report here. If I hit view calendar, that's going to take a second, because what it's doing is it's bringing up the calendar. It's loading all of the data that we had on the other screen into our calendar. So we're looking at June of 2025. Here are all of those PMs that we saw and what day each one of them is landing on. So I can group by assign to, and now I can see each assigned to, so each group, and where their PMs are landing. Then if I want to, I can filter that a little further. If I want to see maybe only maintenance and mechanical, maybe I'm not working with custodial or HVAC, I just want to see maintenance and mechanical, I can just select those two assign to codes, and then I hit refresh, and now I'm going to see just those two. I can take any of these and double click on them and open up the PM procedure entry. And then I can go to my line scheduling details, and I can see, the checklist that's attached to it. I can see what the labor hours are for it. I can see the detailed work description. So I can see all of the I can get right to that PM. Now, I mentioned a few times about load balancing. I can move PMs on this calendar. Okay. But what it's doing when I do that is it's changing the last done date. Okay. So if when I do this, not only is it going to change the PM for this month, it's going to change that last done date for every PM going forward from there. So that is kind of it's a good thing, but it's a bad thing. So it's a good thing in that if I'm looking at monthly PMs, if I'm looking at just monthly PMs and I'm moving them to do a load balance situation, then that's fine. We're going to get them moved, and they'll be balanced for all of the months going forward. But we also have to keep in mind that maybe we have more on one day this month, but in all the other months of the year, we don't have that situation because we just have some annual PMs in here or something like that. So we want to be able to keep a close eye on that, and we can see that by clicking any of the PMs and seeing what the frequency is, I'm gonna close it out. Sorry, seeing what the frequency is, seeing who it's assigned to, the number of hours there are for it. So we can see that we have a couple of quarterlies here coming out at the same time and an annual. So that might be the kind of thing where we'd want to move it around. So I just wanted to caution that you can move PMs on this calendar, but you're not only moving it for one instance, you're moving it for all of them. Okay. So that's just like I said, I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of what this calendar can do and what it gives you. We can also, when we're looking at our forecast report, we had it set to assign to, but we can change how we're grouping it so we can see it by building if we want to, right? And then from there, we can filter it down to see just one building or two buildings or whatever we want to see. Okay, so once we're in the calendar, the grouping and the filter can be changed whenever you want and as many times as you want. All right. Okay. Are there any questions about the PM calendar or the PM forecasting report?
Christy was wondering if you could show how to get to the calendar again, but she gave a thumbs up, so I'm assuming it's figured out, but maybe you could as well for other people maybe who didn't quite catch how you got to that calendar. There's multiple ways, but that was question number one. And question two was Yolanda was asking how do you get to the faculty database, and I mentioned is our internal demo database.
Yeah.
So that's something that's on their system, but
perfect. So to get to the forecast report, just to reiterate that, we find it under module preventive maintenance PM forecast report. Okay. If you don't see it under preventive maintenance, but you see the phantom hours report, that means you don't have the PM forecast report, you have the older phantom hours report. You contact support or contact your account manager, and they'll be able to help you out to get that PM forecast report put into your system. If you don't see either the PM forecast report or the phantom hours report under preventive maintenance, it just means it's disabled in security. So you would want to be moved to a different user group or have your user group edited. And for that, you would talk to whoever the administrator is at your location, or contact support, and they'll either be able to make the change for you, or they'll be able to tell you who you need to talk to get the change made. Okay, so that is just like everything else in our system. It is a security setting that can be done. You can remove access to that report. So if you don't see it, that might be why.
A question again, do you assign permissions to certain users to view the calendar, or is it available to all users in the PM module?
So anyone who has access to the PM forecast report can view the calendar. Okay. So it's no anyone who has access to the anyone who has access to the PM forecast report can view the calendar. You can remove access to just the PM forecast report in security so that they can't view that. The other thing is, if someone has access to view the calendar, but they don't have access to edit PM procedures. So let's say they had read-only access to PM procedure entry and they had access to the PM forecast report, they'd be able to run it and they'd be able to forecast it, but they wouldn't be able to move the PMs on the calendar because it does require editing the PM procedure entry. Okay, so you can give them access to look and still prevent them from making changes. Okay. Any other questions?
I think that's it. We're ready to move on.
All right. Okay, so that was the first piece. Using the calendar, we already talked about that. Planning parts. I think I had that same issue in my slides last time. So planning parts. And what I'm going to start with here is forecasting parts. So we're going to go back to that PM forecasting report. Um, then using planned quantities on the automatic reorder, okay, and um, how to view available inventory on the work order console. So I know that for this group, parts might not be something that's kind of at the forefront of what you're doing. Um, I've talked to a lot of schools, a lot of hospitals, and for the most part, I don't see a lot of that a lot of customers in that group who are tracking their spare parts inventory. But I want to go through this piece anyway because maybe you'll find something in here that is useful to you and might make you decide to start tracking spare parts or using some version of it. So let's start with parts forecasting. So on our on our oh, I put the wrong screenshot on here. On our uh, PM forecasting report, let's jump over to the system so we can see what it actually looks like. Uh, so on our PM forecast report, we're going to run it for June again, just because I want to be consistent. So on our PM forecast report, we have the layout that we saw before, right? We have the same layout that we saw um, in the last section. But the thing we didn't talk about in the last section was the material tab. What our material tab gives us is um, the quantity of parts that are required for, in this case, I have it broken down by week still. So for each week. Okay, so we can see that we have a zero value for our custodial PMs, right? We have a zero value here, so we don't require any parts. But then we need 2 for HVAC on the week of June 8th. So if I double click on that, it's going to show me the 2 PMs. And I can see this bottom one has a zero value again. The top one has a material value of $141. So I can double click on that PM and I can go to line scheduling details and I can see what materials are required. Okay, well, we have a bearing and a filter. So I can forecast what parts are going to be required. What I need to do for this, in order for this to work, is that I need to be using I need to be putting planned materials on my PMs. And that actually is something that I didn't mention in the other section. In order to use the PM forecast report to uh, give us hours, we need to be putting planned hours in our PMs, okay, or estimated hours in our PMs. So if we put estimated materials, then we can forecast what materials are going to be required. The other thing that gives us, okay, so this is PM forecast report. We're looking out in the future, right? We're looking what are we gonna need in June? Maybe if we have long lead time parts required in June, maybe we want to proactively place an order ahead of time and kit those parts for June. But by adding those planned parts onto our PMs, the second thing that we're getting along with that forecasting is that when we create our PM work orders, so when we run our PM schedule, we're getting, oh, there we go. We're getting planned parts on our work orders, right? So when we have now we have planned parts on our work orders. So this here is the setup of one work order. Okay, there's 4 parts required. One of each one. We've got for the first part we have 8 on hand. The second part we only have 1 on hand, and we need 1. The third part we need 1. We have 0 on hand. Right? So we have a couple here where we're one where we definitely don't have enough parts, and another one where we're in danger of not having enough parts. But since we have those planned quantities on there, we can run our automatic, our inventory automatic reorder system. And when we do that, if we check the box that says use work order planned quantity in calculation, what that's going to do is when it runs the automatic reorder, it's going to check and it's going to say, okay, we have none of these parts. We need to have, we need one. We have one planned, so we need to order that on top of what we need to bring us up to up above our minimum quantity. The second one here, we have one planned, and we only have one on hand, so that's going to be zero after we do this work order. So now we need to make sure that we're ordering enough to supply that one plus bring us up to our minimum, up above our minimum quantity. Okay, and our automatic reorder is doing that. When we run that order, one second, let me lamp on. There we go. I had to remember which one it was. It's the very top one here, right? So our minimum is one. Our minimum is one. Our maximum is five. We have zero on hand. So we're reordering four automatically to make sure that we have enough, that we end up with enough on hand. Okay, so that's what our automatic reorder is doing. If you're doing purchasing within Directline, the automatic reorder will create requisitions for you. Okay, so we would come in, we would run our automatic reorder process. It would tell us these are all the parts that are at or below minimum and need to be ordered. We would select the ones we want to order, or maybe we'd hit select all. And then what it would do is it would create a requisition. It would create requisitions for each supplier, right? So we'd end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 suppliers, or six requisitions. There we go. Okay, so it would create those purchases for you. If you're using inventory, but you're not using the purchasing module in Directline, you can still use the automatic parts reorder in a way. So what you can do with the automatic parts reorder is you can use this to tell you what needs to be ordered. So that's why we have an export button right here. So you can run the automatic reorder. It'll show you what you need, and then you can export that. It'll export into a spreadsheet so that you can print it out, or you can copy it to your local machine, and you can go to your purchasing software or your purchasing department, and you can get those parts ordered. Okay, so putting those planned parts on your preventive maintenance procedures, it gives you the ability to get this. It gives you the ability to get it gives you the ability to stay ahead of that inventory. So when you run your scheduler for next month, you can run your automatic reorder and you can see what parts you'll need. Do we have any questions about that?
No, I think we're good. I think, like you said, maybe not as many people in this this group using that thing, but I do think it's a great function, even if you're using it for your filters. You know, or things like once a year I've got to go change all the sprinkler heads out in all the fields, and you need certain things. So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's get into the next piece, and this next piece is probably where we're going to take up most of our time, but it's also something that I think everyone will find useful, and that's the planning features in the work order console. So I'm gonna talk about a few that are that have been in the system for a long time, right? But not a lot of people use them. The planning mode criteria and using planning mode for editing work orders directly on the work order console. Okay, so the planning mode criteria lets you lets you set your console in planning mode and group your work orders by trade or by employee. Planning mode lets you edit your work orders without having to go into work order screens. It allows you to edit certain fields. And then we're going to talk about the planning calendar. So the planning calendar is something that we have had a version of it in the past, but we have a much nicer version now, a much more functional version now, and we can use it. It's a lot more user friendly. And you're going to notice that it looks a lot like the one that we had in our PM forecast report. So let's get into the details on all of those things. So I don't have any more slides, so we're gonna jump out of PowerPoint here, and we're gonna look at our demo system again. So this is my work order console, right? I've got my all my work orders displayed here. I have this nice little feature here that I didn't mention in the last piece. This is this IA column. This is our inventory available. So when we're looking at parts availability, right? We are planned parts. We see here we have a couple of work orders that are in waiting parts status, and they have our red X in the IA column. That red X means that we don't have all the parts we need. So we'll go to the labor and material tab. We can see we're missing this this last item here. Once that part has been ordered and it arrives, this red X is going to turn to a green check mark. So, and we don't have to do anything to do that other than receive the parts. Once the parts are received and there's enough in inventory, that's going to turn to a green check mark. So then you can look at everything that's showing waiting parts, but has a green check mark. And now you know that that work order can be planned. So you can change the status and you can issue it to someone. But who are we going to issue it to? Let's take a look at that. So down to the bottom left-hand corner of our work order console, there's a section called Planning Mode Criteria. So what this does is this is going to take all our work orders and it's going to group them by whatever criteria we give it. So if we say, I want to group by assigned to, and then I refresh my console, and keep in mind, anytime we make a change to the console, we have to refresh it. There's no automatic refresh on the work order console because that has the potential to slow the servers down a lot. So we don't put an automatic refresh on there. We leave that so you can refresh it when you need to. So what we're seeing here is all of our work orders broken down by assigned to code, right? So we have a list of work orders here assigned to maintenance. The estimated hours on those work orders is 22. We have 112 hours available. So 112 labor hours available for all of our maintenance employees. So we're at 20% utilization right now. Must be a slow week. But that's we can see all of that just by looking at our work order console right here. We also have some more details we can get into. So the next section over is date criteria. Okay, in the date criteria, we're set to look at work orders just for today. If we hit the drop down, we can choose to do it for the next 7 days, the next 14 days, 30 days, or we can do custom and just pick a date range. We can also hit the options button at the bottom and we can decide what our date criteria pertains to. So right now we're including work orders if the due date satisfies the date criteria. So we're looking at everything that's due today or earlier. We can change that to the planned date. So we could say include the work order if the planned date satisfies the date criteria. So then it's everything that's planned today or earlier. We could do include the work order if the planned date or the due date satisfy the date criteria. Then it'll look at both. Or we could open it wide open. We could say do not use date criteria. And then when we hit OK, it's just going to show us everything, regardless of the date. So we can choose whichever of those we want. So I'm looking at due date. Let's change that to planned date just so we can see if it makes a a change to it, and then we're going to refresh. There we go. So now we're seeing a little bit of a different, layout now. We've got a lot more work orders, and here's something that probably looks a little bit more familiar. Our carpenters have 320 hours estimated of the 16 available. So we're at 200 or 2005% utilization. Maybe not totally realistic, but I bet you it's closer to what you see. Um, so we can see all of that from here, and we can see when we have problems like that, like we have 66 hours estimated for mechanics and we only have 50 available. So we know we're not getting all of this done because we're at 133% utilization. So let's change some of these due dates. Let's move some of these work orders around so that we have so we have a realistic opportunity to get our stuff done. So we could do that by double clicking on a work order, having it open up in the work order processing screen or the work planning screen if that's the one you're using, and then we could change the due date on it down here, and we can save it. The other way we could do it is we can just come to the center of the screen here, center at the bottom. We have three checkboxes. We have enable planning mode, enable multi-selection, and show calendar. I'm going to talk about all three of them, but we're going to start with enable planning mode. If I check this box, you'll notice at the top of four of these columns, it now says editable. So as soon as I turn on planning mode, I can edit, because I'm using assign to as my planning mode criteria, I can edit assign to, status, plan date, and due date. So if I'm looking at my mechanics here and I'm saying, well, I've got too much planned for this week, let's move some of these work orders. Well, now I can go here and I can take my date due on this work order, and I can push it out to next week. Let's change the plan date on it as well. And now when I refresh, I'm going to see that work order just move out of there. Now we're only at 123% utilization, right? So we can make those changes right from here. I can also do it this way. I can change my planning mode criteria to issued to, and I can refresh. And all I did here, I didn't make any changes to dates or anything like that. All I did was change my planning mode to issue to. Now I can change my issue to, status, date due, date scheduled, and hours scheduled on my issue, on when I'm set to issue to. So now I can take these work orders and I can look at I can look at who has work orders issued to them, and I can change the issue to. So I can move this work order from Pat just by changing the employee, right? So I change that to Ken Chang, and it stays here until I refresh, and then it's going to move, right? When I'm changing things like dates, where as soon as I make that change, if I look at that work order in the work order processing screen, I'm going to see that due date has changed, right? So we're updating it live just by making the change on here. Now, I will tell you that enable planning mode is the only one of these boxes that's not available to everyone by default. Okay, that is something that needs to be turned on in user security. So if you don't have the ability to enable planning mode, it might not be enabled in your security. You also, in order to enable that planning mode so that you can edit these fields, you have to have planning mode criteria set to trade, assign to, issue to, or crew. If your planning mode criteria is set to none, you cannot enable planning mode. Another thing, or sorry, the next checkbox here is enable multi-selection. You can use enable multi-selection whether you're in planning mode or not, right? So you can use enable multi-selection if you want to print a bunch of work orders at one time. You can also use it if you want to reschedule a bunch of work orders at the same time. So if you wanted to reschedule these 3 work orders right here, you want to set them all to be due on the 27th. We just changed all 3 of them. Now, if I wanted to take those same 3 work orders and I want to issue them to someone else, well, now I did that too. So now I'll refresh it, and Pat will only have 5 work orders instead of 8. Or maybe I did my math wrong. Pat will have 6 work orders instead of 9. So that's what the multi-selection does, is it lets us edit multiple work orders at one time. Okay. It also does things like this. I can select these work orders. If I want to print all of Pat's work orders, I can highlight them all and I can hit print work order. And now all those work orders I selected are in there. If I highlighted those work orders and I wanted to view them all in the work order completion screen, I just highlight them and I hit work order completion. Right? Now I'm browsing one of 6 because I brought up all 6 of those work orders. So the multi-selection works great for planning, lets you change multiple due dates, change multiple issue twos all at once. It's a great tool when you're in planning mode, but it's also a great tool even if you're not working with the planning mode. So the last of these checkboxes is show calendar. And this is the newest feature in our work order console. This is our upgraded calendar. And when I hit show calendar, it looks terrible because what we're looking at here is a calendar for each one of the employees who have work orders issued to them. Right? So up here we're doing group by issue to. So this is each employee. If I change that to assign to, oh, now we're seeing, there we go. Now we're seeing the work orders broken down by assigned to code. If we were to change it to, excuse me, if we were to flip it back to issue to, but we don't want to see it for, wait for it to load. We don't want to see it for all of these employees. Maybe we only want to see it for a couple of them. We can now tap on the filter tab or the filter area, and we can select the employees that we want to see. Then we apply that filter, and here we go. So we can see the work orders that we were displaying. Here's the here's where they're landing on the calendar. Now, what I can do with these work orders is if I look at Ken Chang's week, well, it's the 5th already. We have 3 open work orders from the 3rd. I can take those work orders and I can move them to a different day. Now I've changed the due date on those work orders. Or sorry, did I change the due date? Let's look. If I go back to my options in our date criteria, there's calendar date options. So right now we're looking at the work orders on the date that they're planned, not the date that they're due. But we can change that to due date, and then we can refresh. And now we'll see the work orders on the date that they were due. Reset my filter here. There we go. And we're seeing the work orders on the date that they were due. Whereas we were looking at it before on the date that they were planned. Okay. And you can change that in that options, in that date criteria options, the calendar date down at the bottom. You can either do it by plan date or by due date. Whichever one works for you, whichever one is you're used to using, that's the one you can use. You cannot move work orders from one employee to another from the calendar. So I can't take Ken's work orders and move them to Jim. That's not going to allow me to do that. It won't let me change who they're issued to. We can only change the date that they are due or planned. Each one of these boxes is a work order. Any of them like this that have a number on them, that means that we can only display 4, so that there's one more than 4. Okay, so if we click on that, we can see what that work order is. And we can do that for any of the work orders. We get a basic summary, so work order number, status, and due date and type. We hit load more, and we get all the details about the work order. What other tidbits do we have in here? I think that's about it for the calendar. I do want to point out a few other little things on the work order console that people might not know about. One is first, when we're in planning mode, it uses different selection criteria than when our planning mode criteria is set to none. So if you're set to none and you have selection criteria set, right? Like I have my selection criteria set to show me just electrical, HVAC, maintenance, mechanics, and only open work orders. So I have some filters in here. If I change my planning mode to issue 2 and refresh, my selection criteria is going to be different. So just keep in mind that if you're using certain selection criteria, you may have to set it twice, or set it again when you turn on the planning mode criteria. Also, another thing that I want to point out is the columns to display. So columns to display lets us choose what work orders we're viewing, or sorry, what parts of the work order we're viewing. So if I have things like, and let me get out of my planning mode so I can show you. What the one that comes to mind is this IA column, this inventory available column. By default, it always starts out way over on the right hand side, so it's way at the bottom of the displayed columns list. So we don't see it, right? It's way down there, so we don't see that inventory available column. We can move it just by highlighting it, and you can use these arrow keys over here to move it up and down. You can also remove any columns that you maybe aren't using. Things like if you're not using the project module, you might want to take out project and step. If you're not using labor and material costs, you could remove those, right? That way you don't have columns that just have a bunch of zeros in them, because what information are they giving you, right? If they're not giving you any useful information, then why have them there? If we get rid of them, now we can see a little bit more useful information. Okay, so you can, as with everything else in the work order console, it's user specific, so everybody can set up their console the way they want to set it up. So that goes for your selection criteria to choose what work orders you're seeing, your columns to display to choose what fields on the work order you're seeing, and sort criteria where you're choosing what order you want to see them in. I've got it set to sort by my inventory available column, so I can always see the ones that I'm waiting on parts near the top. But if you're not concerned with that, you just want to see maybe sorted by status or maybe even sorted by building, then you have the ability to do that. And it's not going to affect anyone else's work order console. It's you're only changing your own. Um, okay. I think that's everything that I have for planning features in the work order console. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, if you could quickly just go into user management and just show the people that who do have access to user management where they check the two boxes to enable the planning mode.
I could, but I don't have that access in the demo. I don't
Oh,
have a system that I go into to do that. So
am I allowed to share my screen?
let's do let's do it this way.
Okay.
So those boxes they're in user management. If you There's a checkbox that says user has active profile. If you check that box on the user, then you can go to the second tab, and there'll be boxes there to turn those two things on. To turn on planning mode, give access to planning mode and the summary and dashboard tabs. Okay. If you don't see those, or you can't see where they are, call the support line. Because if you call the support line, they'll be able to walk you through exactly how to do that. They'll be able to show you on your screen how to get into those things and how to make those changes. They'll also be able to answer any questions that maybe I didn't answer here. Um, that's the best thing to do, in my opinion, is call the support line, and they can help you enable those things. If you don't have access to go into user management and look at individual users, you're not going to be able to turn on that access. So then you're going to need to get your whoever has administrative access on your side to do it. If you're not sure who that is, again, call our support line. They'll be able to tell you who the key contact there is, and who you need to get in touch with.
And then there was one other question, and I apologize, Yolanda. I'm not sure if I fully understand it. You're asking, can you activate multiple PMs at once? You can run a PM scheduler if that's what you're talking about, and you can also talk to your account manager about having an automatic PM scheduler that runs on a set day that schedules multiple PMs for it. But when you're saying activate, are you talking about scheduling multiple PMs at one time? Which is I assume, but I don't know for sure. So
Yeah. The
you were on the work order console, and I don't know if there was something there that they were trying to talk about, but
yeah, I'm not I don't I don't think I understand that. Yolanda, if you want to clarify that a little bit in chat, we can talk about it here. Or if you'd rather just be able to talk to somebody, again, our support line is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's unlimited. So if you don't want to try to do it in chat, give them a call. They will 100% be able to help you out with anything you need to do with PMs.
and as most of you know, all training is unlimited and free for anyone at not just people attending here, but anybody on staff. Anything you saw here that drove some ideas and you want to dive in deeper, talk to your account manager. They can schedule some training. If you're lucky, you'll get Cory. No, I'm just kidding. All our trainers are great, but you can always dive in a lot deeper. The idea here is to get you, oh, great, excellent, and then really explore and really get involved in it. So Yolanda saying talking about taking a group of pending work orders and activating them at the same time.
So
Do you mean
Yolanda,
change the status, Yolanda?
I think what
Oh, the
okay,
status, yes.
yeah.
So that you can do the multiple of those with the multiple select. Sorry, I'll
Yeah, so
if you can.
you can do this. I'm still sharing my screen. Yeah.
Mm.
So if you've got that planning mode turned on, and we have multi-selection enabled, then you could take you could do something, and I think this is what you're talking about. Up here, we have work orders that have not been issued to anyone yet. We could take, why did I lose my planning mode? There we go. We could take these 2 work orders here, or as many as we want, and we can issue them to anyone we want to issue them to. We can change the status on both of them at the same time. And we can set due dates on them right from here as well.
And that is instantaneous. So if they're on mobile or something, that's now in their mobile My Work.
And that's exactly right. So if they're working from mobile, as soon as we change that issue to here on the console, even though they didn't move down into the grouping, they're still going to be right there on their mobile device in their My Work list, and they'll see those changes as you make them. I hope that answers your question. If not, by all means, call support and talk to them, or call support and tell them you want to set up a training session, and they'll set up a training session with me, and I'll talk through it with you. Okay. All right.
Great. I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. It was. I hope everyone found some value of it. I think Cory mentioned he'll be posting it at some point on YouTube, and we can send out a link to everybody. We're trying to figure out the best way to send out the links, but we do also post it on YouTube as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Spur asked exactly that, how he can access the recording. I will be posting it on YouTube, and we'll send the link out to everyone who was in here.
Wait, Yolanda's saying, so Yolanda, we may want to just kind of dive in, be a bit deeper with Cory ourselves, but you're asking about 18 drinking fountains already assigned to a particular person, and I want to activate them all at the same time instead of individually. Are you running your PM scheduler or using your PM scheduler, Yolanda? Because there may be 2 different things that you're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That may be something you may want to reach out, so someone can shadow you directly on your application, and they can see exactly what you're trying to do. Because there's multiple things from what I'm reading there that could be a possibility.
Yeah. Yolanda, I'm going to reach out to you outside of this. I'm going to send you an email. I'm fairly certain I have your email address. I'm going to send you an email. Yeah, that's fine. You can call support, and you can talk to them, or like I said, have them set up a training session. And we can walk through it step by step.
Yeah, and that, Yolanda, it's unlimited. There's no cost involved. We want to help, so take as much advantage as you can. Ask as many questions as you want. That there's a lot that seems like it's going on in the system. It's just a matter of using it and doing it. But we're here to kind of walk you through each step. So please reach out.
All right.
Actually, Cory,
thank you everyone very much for joining again. And be sure to check us out on YouTube and take advantage of our unlimited support and training. And we'll see you next time.
Definitely. Thanks.